Welcome back to the Coach Steve Show, and this is going to be our ILL, INI segment and our Bleed Blue segment, only because Eastern Illinois had to face off against the University of Illinois. So we're not going to do 2 episodes. We're going to discuss both here. So this is the ILL, INI segment and the Bleed Blue. Obviously, the first segment will be everything with the University of Illinois. Bleed Blue will be everything with Eastern Illinois University. This is a segment. Both segments are part of the Coach Steve Show, so you got to like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show in order to get both of these. And check out all the other episodes. Make sure you like and subscribe, follow, rate it on Apple and iTunes. We're a little late for this episode because, well, life gets in the way. They had the game on at 8, 10 at night. And, you know, by the time it's over, us old folk, we go to bed. And then I also coach football, so we had a game Friday night and everything. So just now getting to it, and it allows us to reflect and think a little bit. Go back and rewatch the game, you know, all that good stuff. So, yeah, that's just kind of why we're doing this a little late. So make sure, again, like and subscribe. Let me fix the camera here. Boom. There we go. Everything's fixed. Like I said, new podcast set up. We're getting everything adjusted. Getting everything tip-top shape the best we can. So Eastern Illinois traveled to play the University of Illinois on Thursday night. College football is back. Illinois gets the win 45-0 over Eastern Illinois University. So we're going to break down the entire game. We're going to try to talk about it from the Illinois side and the Eastern side, and talk about things that you could look forward to as an Eastern Illinois fan, things you're going to be able to look forward to from an Illinois fan, and everything in between. So make sure you're leaving comments in the comment section down below as well. I already had a first comment because this was a long time ago. Ben Elson, he's an EIU alum, says, my family thinks bad play calling was to blame. Thoughts? Did you see any? And this is something that I stay away from a little bit because we're not there game planning, right? You know, me as a coach, I can sit there and say, oh, they're doing X, Y, and Z, ABC. Why are they not calling this? A couple reasons that I don't get into is because, one, we're not in the meetings. We're not in the meetings with the Eastern coaches. We're not in the meeting with Illinois coaches, and we don't know what the team can do, right? You have a plan, you have a system, you have plays that you want to do, but we also don't know injury factors. We don't know if they're picking up on the scheme that we want to do. Are they lining up a certain way to take away a certain scheme? So now you're forced to do a different one. I don't know if it was necessarily bad play calling. I just think that Illinois is going to be better than what they were last year. And I think you saw that on display a little bit. Now, I will say this. I think a big thing that happened was Eastern stopped Illinois on its first drive and forced them to punt. And that was a win. That's a win. And then Eastern is marching down the field. They were getting run plays. They were getting their pass plays. And they looked good. I mean, defensively, they were flying around hitting people. They were very physical. And then on offense, they were moving the ball. And it looked like it was going to be a game that Eastern was going to have to pass the ball. Illinois' run defense looked better. They're putting a lot of pressure on their linebackers to make a lot of plays this year. They're going to put them on display because they believe that's where a big strength of theirs is going to be. Their defensive line was, you know, double gapping and making sure that things were not getting up the field. And so Eastern said, okay, we're going to have to do key screens. We're going to have to do short passing game. We're going to have to hope that we make a play. And they did. And then they fumbled the ball. And as soon as they fumbled the ball, the entire air came out of the balloon of Eastern, because then they weren't moving the ball the same way that they were doing before. They weren't blocking the same way they were blocking. And then there was a couple times where I felt that Eastern in the pass game, the wide receivers just straight up dropped the ball. And so I just think there was times Eastern shot themselves in the foot. And I also just think that Illinois' defense, like I said, for a preview of the entire season for Illinois, is that the defense, I think, personally, is going to get better and be better than they were last year. And being better than they were last year is going to be a big step forward. And again, I said this was a super tough game for Eastern. And for Eastern, you could not afford to make mistakes, and you had to have long sustaining drives. And then you had to force Illinois either into long drives and hope that they make a mistake, or you're going to have to somehow force pressure and be very physical with them up front. But again, everybody was blaming the offensive line last year for Illinois. And I said this, and I already know what people are going to say. Well, this is just Eastern. I've already seen it. This is just Eastern, so we can't take too much away. I think you can, because Eastern had a big offensive line. They had some skill guys. Their running back was good. So I still think there are things you can take away from this for Illinois. It's not just Eastern, right? And the offensive line looked much more physical up front. They looked way more confident in what they were doing. Luke Altmaier looked amazing. There was a scare there that he was hurt because he was like hobbling and he went out of bounds, and all that stuff. But we're going to try to get you some numbers here. I had it pulled up, then it disappeared. This is great radio. Great radio. Luke Altmaier played well. 19 of 24, 213 pass yards. He had 4 touchdowns. Illinois, I don't think, has had a 4 touchdown passer in a very long time. And then you just saw, I said this after I went to the spring practice. I said, the offensive line looks big and physical, and they put that on display, and that the running backs were huge and they're fast. They called it thunder and lightning. You have Caden Fagian. He had 108 yards rushing. He's fast, but he is your muscle guy. He's your big guy. If it's 3rd and 2, you probably are going to give him the ball. Aiden Lowry is your fast, speedy guy. So now you're switching it up. I'm not saying he's faster than Caden, but you're thinking, okay, he's a speedier guy. So you're going boom, 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 downhill, this physical runner. Now you bring in this guy that's really fast, and you're switching the pace on the defense of how they're going to tackle him. He had 79 yards rushing, and so there was 244 yards rushing total. So the offensive line was physical and doing their job. I don't think Luke Altmaier got sacked, so the offensive line and pass protection was looking good. Receiving for Illinois, this is a big thing that was a plus that we were very excited for, because a couple things for Illinois is consistent quarterback play, but the receivers. Do we have anybody that we could just throw the ball up to? Do we have anybody that they have to sort of peek to, not to quite double coverage, but to kind of to cheat a safety over, or maybe instead of playing man on them, they have to play zone to kind of bump them into the next person's zone? Do we have that type of guy and then open up somebody else? And I think we do. Pat Bryant had 63 yards receiving. Ensley had 51 yards. Hollins had 40 yards. And I think Sakari Franklin, he had a couple catches out of bounds, but he had 28 yards. But just the presence of a tall, lengthy receiver is going to open up everybody else. So the offense looked very much well balanced. We were completing passes and letting them make plays down the field, and being athletes. And again, I said this, go listen to episodes where I talked about the spring practice. And I know you can't take everything away from spring practice because it's spring practice. But I said from watching them, they looked really fast. They looked very physical. And it looked like they were going to have people to throw the ball up to, and they did. And so this is plus if you're an Illinois fan. This is a big plus if you're an Illinois fan, because now you have 1-2 punch run game if they can stay healthy. Luke Altmaier is pretty fast, so now you have the threat of the quarterback taking off once in a while or scrambling and getting out of there. And now you've got the receivers. Defensively, I said they were going to be fast. They gave up some plays in man, and that's what you're going to do. Think about to the really good defense we had a couple years ago. They gave up some plays too because you're in man, and that's what happens. But the D-line was moving around. The linebackers were causing pressure. And so if they can play fast and confident, they're going to be just fine. And so these were the keys coming into the season for Illinois. When you flip it over to the Eastern side, there was drop passes for sure. There was a couple mesh routes that they dropped. There was a couple open receivers that they dropped. I think Illinois was taking away a lot of the zone stuff. So Eastern was trying to do, I saw some GT. I saw some play side GT stuff. I want to say there was tackle wrap involved, but they just how fast Illinois' defense was. It was hard for as fast as Illinois' defense was, it was tough for Eastern to try to keep up with that speed. And this sometimes is what you see when you have FCS versus FBS. But, Pierce, I said in the pregame that it might be hard to rattle him. I think he got a little rattled as it went on because he was running all over the place because Illinois was bringing, exotic blitzes. They're playing man coverage. They're being physical. He was 16 of 32, 147 yards. He did have 2 interceptions. And so I said, Eastern, you cannot afford turn the ball over. So they have 2 interceptions and they fumbled it. You cannot afford that, right? And I said that if you turn the ball over, you're probably not going to put position to win. He was running around. I thought he tried to force it. Sometimes he ran when he didn't have to. But the receivers were not catching. I think Coach Wilkerson might agree there was times where they weren't helping him out by catching the ball. MJ Flowers, their experienced running back, had a hard time running. He had 9 carries for 28 yards. Jay Pearson came in for them, had 6 carries, 20 yards. So they were relying on the pass game because they just got behind. And when you get behind, you can still run the ball. But when you're behind, you're trying to get some big plays, try to, and softening up the coverage so that way you can get the ball downhill behind your linemen. So I just think a lot of that came into play. But there's still positives. DeMar Smith for Eastern had 63 yards reception, matched Pat Bryant, the leading receiver for Illinois. Mirza had 38 yards catching. CJ Nelson had 21 yards. So there's still some positives. And you have to think if you're Eastern, you went toe-to-toe with the speed of Illinois. You dropped passes. There was times people were open and they were just missed. We might miss a block on pass protection. So just little things on each play and each drive that if you do these 1 or 2 things, you're right there and you're able to move the ball. And I know you didn't score and that's frustrating. And I know there's no such thing as moral victories, but this is also a way to look at it and say, okay, you went toe to toe with a Division I team. We shot ourselves in the foot a couple of times. We turned the ball over 3 to 4 times. And if we don't do that, we probably have an opportunity to score 2 out of the 3 times. So now you're looking at 14 points. And then if you don't give up certain big runs or big plays against Illinois, and you can at least get a field goal out of it, to march down, we actually catch these passes, you're putting yourself in a much better position than what you did during this game. So again, I'm not going to speak for Coach Wilkerson, but just being a coach and talking to those guys, I don't think they're going to look at moral victories. They're going to look at it and say, hey, yeah, we had a lot of physical plays. I thought that their defense and their linebackers tackled really tough on a lot of the plays, but then they just let a big run happen, big pass play happen. And a lot of the catches that Illinois had were very contested and they were just better plays. So you're Eastern and you're saying, hey, we're most of the time in perfect position in this defense and they're just catching it, right? Like there's really nothing you can do in that situation unless you want to get a pass interference call. So there are still things that you can take away, and you're going to take away and saying, okay, we still are going to play a very tough schedule, but some of these things we continue to work on and show what we need to work on in our conference. We are still going to try to get to that 8, 9, 10 win mark, and we can still do it. We still have the pieces in place. We can compete with the teams that are just like us in our conference. And so if you're Eastern, you're taking that and you're telling it to your players and you're showing what they're going to work on. And maybe some things as coaches, you preach and preach and preach, and they're not really picking up on it. Then you go to a game and say, hey, remember when I told you that we have to work on this. We have to be in this position. You have to do this. Well, now it's on film. Now you see it. So there are still positives for Eastern. I thought that even though I know I'm probably the only one, how can you say they competed when they didn't score any points? You could still compete and lose. You can still compete and, not score points. They competed and they were physical. And I was watching their defense and rewatching the game. The linebackers flew around and wanted to hit people. The defensive line wanted to hit people. Their corners were very chippy in the secondary. So I just think that they are still a very physical team. And we talked about their defense last year at 25 takeaways. They were bringing some people back. And it was a Thursday night game. So and I'm not making excuses, just things that, you could take away from this and say, we play on a Saturday and, all these things. So there's still positives for Eastern to take away from this. And again, may repeat myself, but if you're Illinois, I don't want to hear, oh, it's just Eastern. Oh, it's just Eastern. No. You want to see Luke Altmaier control the offense. You want to see him control the huddle. You want to see him be able to hit on some of these deeper passes that we need as we get into Big Ten play. Kansas is going to be tough. Like, you need to see these things. You need to be able to see the offensive line establish the line of scrimmage and push people around and run the football. You want to see them communicating up front to get the pass protection down so Luke Altmaier is not scrambling. You want to see a physical run game and try to keep the running back room healthy and just having the threat to the wide receivers. And on defense, the physicality, the flying around that we kind of didn't have last year that we had a couple years ago. And it's not going to be the same. I'm telling you right now, we just need to get that out of our mind. We're not going to be that type of defense. We don't have the players, but we have fast players. We are going to give up big plays, but this is the stuff I said for the entire season, not just this game, for the entire Illinois season. This is the stuff you want to see, and we've got to see it consistently, right? And so for Illinois, you're happy that you saw some of these things. There's still things to work on, obviously, but now it's there. Now you can grow from it, and now it helps Barry Loney Jr. What can he call? Can he open it up a little bit? I know Coach Bielema wants to run the football, and they're still going to run the football, but having the threat of being able to not just look at Isaiah Williams, that's probably one of the only guys we've had, but now you've got multiple guys. And then you could put Caden in and Lowry, and Lowry could be a slot guy, and just so many different packages and formations you can use to put the defense off balance. Those are the things you wanted to see. So I think if for Illinois, you're feeling good going into the Kansas game, seeing those things that we've been missing. And if you're Eastern, you're taking the way you played and the physicality of it and taking that into your season and saying, if we could be that physical and then we could just start executing on some things, we are going to be in a good spot and a good situation. Because I know that they weren't scoring and I know things went bad, but I didn't really see them give up, right? There was no give up. And I said this, they have bought into what Coach Wilkerson and staff have instilled with the Eastern Illinois culture and their own version of it with Eastern. And so if they continue to buy in and do those things, they are going to be able to compete on their schedule in their conference. So that's kind of my breakdown from that game. I know it was late, but do the best I can. Again, I know the intro said ILL, I&I segment. I am going to make a playlist on the YouTube channel where you have your ILL, I&I segment, where it's just all University of Illinois. Then you're going to have Bleed Blue, which is just Eastern Illinois University. This is going to be put on both because it's breaking it down for both because I don't want to, make 2 episodes repeating myself. Check out, there's plenty of interviews with high school and college coaches out there. There's a segment called the Bear Down segment tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time, Central Time. Zach Kalman's going to jump on. We're going to discuss the Bears as they head into their first game against the Tennessee Titans. So just a lot of stuff, and I've got things in the works coming out too. So I need your help. Like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the bell and everything else so you know. Check it on Apple, review it, rate it, subscribe to it there. Follow it. I think it's follow, not subscribe. Do it on Spotify too. So wherever you get it, do that for me, please, and thank you. Always leave comments in the comment section down below. I do the best I can to get back to them if I can. Like I said, I coach high school football too, so it's very tough. So thanks everybody for watching and or listening. Do all that stuff for me. It'd be greatly appreciated. Let me know what you thought about the game and your thoughts of it, and we'll try to have another pregame for Eastern Illinois and a pregame for Illinois as we move forward. And we're going to have Bear stuff, just a lot of things for people. So make sure you're checking it out. Follow on X, Coach_Steve72, and the Coach Steve Show. Instagram, Coach Steve72, and the Coach Steve Show there as well. TikTok, Coach Steve72. Also, thank you guys again for watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve. I will see you guys next time.